I want to give you an example on this video of really how the 1919 principle can be looked at from a couple of different standpoints. And the example that I'm going to give you on this video is something that I like to call the 3x5 index card example.
Don't you die with your songs telling you just sing with me.
Now, when you read ancient literature, they will tell you to take a 3x5 index card and write your goal on it, and then carry that around with you and look at it all the time. Look at your goal, or it might not be your goal, it might be your overall ideal purpose in life. Your primary objective is, I believe, what Napoleon Hill called it. He called it your primary objective. Now, in today's world, if we're not thinking like the 1919 generation thought, we might say, okay, well, great, I wrote it down in my journal, or I wrote it down over here. But the instructions were to write it on a 3x5 index card. Now, why is that important? I've talked to my dad a lot about this. If you go back in time prior to, our, modern day generation, during that 1919, what I call the 1919 generation, which were people that lived well into the 1930s and beyond, but they were of that generation. Every office had a thing called a Rolodex, okay? And in that Rolodex, it was just a way to organize 3x5 index cards. Libraries, I believe they still have them today, have a duodecimal system where they have those 3x5 index cards in these folders where you look through and you find the book that you're looking for. Okay? So if you worked for someone in an office, for example, and you were a secretary and your boss said, give me the information on, Mr. Breckenridge or whatever. Well, you would go and you would look through the Rolodex of 3x5 index cards. And Mr. Breckenridge's information better be in there, because there was no computers. That's where it existed, on a 3x5 index card. That's where it lived. So you would thumb through there in alphabetical order and you would find his information and you would write down his phone number or address or whatever your boss wanted, and you would take it to him. And if that information was missing, you were in a lot of trouble. It was very important. The minds of people who were a part of the 1919 generation understood that when they were looking at a 3x5 index card, that information was of ultimate importance. When you left the office and you went home, usually in the kitchen, there was another Rolodex. And what was in that Rolodex? Recipes that were handed down through generation after generation. So if you wanted to make that apple pie that was in your generation, that was in your family, well, you didn't go to YouTube because it didn't exist. You looked at the 3x5 index card, and there was that recipe that was handed down from your mother and your grandmother and so on and so forth. So everybody who existed during this time had a psychological mindset. And the psychological mindset is that when you're looking at a 3x5 index card, you're looking at something that is important. Your mind was literally keyed into understanding that. So when you wrote down your goal or your overall objective or your primary objective, as Napoleon Hill called it, and you wrote it on a 3x5 index card, the moment you look at that 3x5 index card, your subconscious mind is trained to understand that is something that is going to get done. That is something that is important, without even thinking that it's important, simply because it's on a 3x5 index card. So this is why I'm just giving you this one example. There's many other examples like this, but that's one example why when we read books like The Science of Getting Rich or Think and Grow Rich, or when we read stuff by Thomas Troward, or when we read stuff by these ancient people that wrote, our mind has to be kind of reset to fully understand what it is that they were trying to tell us. because some of the things that they talked about were just things that were just understood in those days, and they're not understood in our day. Okay, so as we move forward, I'm going to give you a couple more examples of this 1919 principle mindset, so that we can really understand why it's important that when we look at this ancient information and try to apply it into today's world, that we have a mindset of the 1919 generation. Okay, so think about this, meditate on this. We'll see you in the next video.